Good day, students. In this presentation, we will be looking at the requirements for the foundation and intermediate phase specialization of the Bachelor of Education degree. So in other words, we will look at what is required in order for you to complete your degree and graduate. Now, the first thing you need to understand is the concept of credits. As you pass your module, you have been picking up credits, generally 16 credits for most of your module, and the occasional module gave you 8 credits. By the end of your qualification, you have to have accumulated a total of 512 credits. It is possible that you may have picked up a few extra and end up with more than 512 credits. That is acceptable, although not encouraged, but you cannot complete the degree with less. So please keep track of the credits that you have obtained so far and the number of credits that is required to be registered this year in order for you to have 512 credits by the end of 2021. The second thing that is important has to do with the duration of the degree. The Bachelor of Education degree is a 4-year qualification. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, this actually means that we require you to be registered for a minimum of 8 semesters. Now, for some of you, you will go over. You may need 9 or 10 semesters to complete. That is acceptable as long as it doesn't go on to something like 16, 17, 18, then you will find yourself in trouble. But a few more semesters than 8 is acceptable. It happens. What is not allowed, however, is to have fewer than 8 semesters. So you cannot graduate if you are only registered for 7 semesters. Now, this is relevant for those of you who might have started your degree 3 years ago, but not registered every semester since. So maybe you didn't register in the first semester of second year or for the second semester of second year. Or maybe you only started the degree in the second semester of first year. In other words, if you are currently going into your 6th semester, so you are completing your 6th and 7th semesters this year, you will not complete your degree and graduate next year. You will have to register in 2022 for your final 8th semester. So please check the number of semesters. If you've completed 6 semesters so far, then obviously you are going into your 7th and 8th this year and you are on track to complete. But if you have missed out a semester for whatever reason, then remember that you have to register for 8 semesters in order to complete the degree. Now, for those students who transferred into the B.Ed degree, possibly from another qualification at UKZN, or maybe even from another university, your situation can be a little bit different. You still need 8 semesters, but in your case, if you passed modules that we recognized as being relevant for the B.Ed degree, and you applied for exemption with credit for some of our modules, and we gave you exemptions with credits based on what you had done in other qualifications, then depending on the number of exemptions that you received, we may also have recognized you as having been registered for semesters. Now, these semesters that we recognize from other degrees or other qualifications, they are referred to as deemed semesters. But we only give you a deemed semester if you are recognized and are given enough exemptions. So if you come in with no exemptions, then you have no deemed semesters. If you come in with only 1 or 2 modules being recognized and only 16 or 32 credits being exempt for you and credited to you, then you probably do not have any deemed semesters either and would have to register for a full 8 semesters with us. But if we recognized you for, say, 3 or more modules and gave you 3 or more exemptions, then it is possible that we do have 1 or 2 semesters recognized against your academic record, as deemed semesters, and we do count these when we are determining the number of semesters that you have registered. So whether you're a transfer student or you start straight in for the BA degree, you have to have 8 semesters recognized on your academic record. But for transfer students, this could possibly include deemed semesters. Finally, in order to graduate, you have to satisfy the curriculum requirements for your specific phase. And these are specified in the College of Humanities Handbook, and I will be going through these requirements here in this presentation. Now, each phase has a number of requirements. Some of the requirements are common across all the phases, but there are also differences. And it's these differences in particular, the ones that are particular to your phase, that you need to know and understand, so that you don't get confused between the requirements for your phase and somebody else's requirements in a different phase. You don't need to worry about other people's requirements. You do need to understand and know the requirements for your phase. So we will go through now the curriculum requirements specific for the foundation and intermediate phase. Now, the first curriculum requirement refers to core modules, and these are actually modules that are common for everybody. Now, there is one exception which I will point out, but in general, everybody will do the modules that are on this slide. So the first set of modules are your education studies modules, your major, and everybody by now hopefully has passed EdStuds 210, 220, 310, 320. And most of you will be registering for EdStuds 410 and 420 this year. Secondly, you have your professional studies modules, and most of you again should have passed 110, 120 and 210 by now, and you will be doing your final prof studies module in the second semester this year. Now, the final module is different for different phases. So for your phase, the module you will be doing is Professional Studies 220. Then, of course, we have teaching practice. And again, hopefully you've passed 120, 220, and 320 and will be registering for 420. If you have not passed up to 320, then you have to register for the outstanding teaching practice module, which should be 320, before you can register for 420. If this applies to you, then you may need to liaise with Mrs. Van Wyk about registering for 420. But you would have to register online for 320 first. Then in first year, you should have passed computer literacy, academic literacy in English, which we normally just refer to as ALE, and then you should have passed in your second year one foundation module. Now, we have 5 foundation modules, and you could have done any of these 5. So hopefully you've already passed either African, a Globalizing World, Diversity and Learning, Perspectives on Human Nature, Mathematics 110, or because you are in Foundation and Intermediate, you could also have done Critical Inquiry in ECD. So everybody has to pass at least one of these modules in order to graduate. Secondly, we have the language requirements or language modules. Now, because you are teaching in the primary phases, in the intermediate and foundation phases, this means that you will be a language teacher of both first and second language. So what this means is that you have to do 2 modules in English as well as 2 modules in a second language. Now, the term second language here refers to a language other than English. So, for the English requirement, you will already have ALE, academic literacy, so that counts as the first English module. Then the second one, you have to either do English language course, commonly referred to as ELC, or you have to do English Communication 110. So you have to have at least one of these. It is possible for you to do both. That is not a problem because the content and the outcomes of these two modules is completely different. But you have to have at least one of them. Secondly, for the second language requirement, for most of you, you will have either done 2 modules of isiZulu, so conversational isiZulu 110 and 120, or you would have done communication in isiZulu 110 and 120. The difference, of course, is that communication in isiZulu is aimed at mother tongue speakers of isiZulu who can read, write, and speak isiZulu fluently. Conversational isiZulu 110 and 120 are aimed at non-mother tongue speakers or non-speakers of isiZulu. Although hopefully by now you have picked up a little bit of isiZulu because you would have completed these modules in either your first or second year. If you have not yet done so though, please make sure that you do complete them this year or you will not graduate. Notice I also have Afrikaans Communicasie 110 and 120 there. We used to offer these as a second language option. And so for students who registered quite a number of years ago and then left and then have come back to complete their degree, it is possible that you might have Afrikaans Communicasie 110 and 120 as your second language modules. Please note the 2 modules have to be in the same second language. So you have to have either the 2 Zulu or possibly you might have the 2 Afrikaans modules. But if you registered for the degree after the university's language policy around isiZulu came into effect, then you have to also have the 1 module of isiZulu. The language policy I'm referring to is the policy that every student who is registered at UKZN for an undergraduate degree has to complete 1 module of isiZulu. So if you registered and started your degree after that policy came into effect, then it means you have to have either conversational isiZulu 110 or communication in isiZulu 120. So one of those would have to be in your qualification, regardless of whether or not you did the Afrikaans modules instead. Now, the next set of modules are your foundation and intermediate phase specialization modules. So here we have primary mathematics 110, 210, and this year you will be registering for 310. Language and literacy, you should have passed 210 and 220 already and should be registering for 320 this year. Learning area studies 210 is the Arts and Culture and Social Sciences Learning Area Studies module. Learning Area Studies 220 is the Life Orientation and EMS Learning Area Studies module. So if either of those are outstanding, then they are completed this year. Learning Area Studies 310 is the Natural Science and Technology Learning Area Studies module, and that is done in the first semester of 4th year. So you should be registering for that this year. And then finally, there's the Learning Area Studies 320 module, which is the Life Skills Learning Area Studies module, which is also done in 4th year in the 2nd semester. Now, the only thing that is left are what we refer to as the elective modules. And in your particular qualification, you have 6. Now, these are modules that are really just there to get you to your 512 credits that you need in order to complete the degree. So that is really the purpose of elective modules. They're there to get you to 512 credits. However, in your phase, you have to be careful. You are the only phase that actually has a rule about your elective modules. And the rule is as follows. 2 of your elective modules have to be at level 300. That means they have to have a number 310 or a 320 in their name and in their module code. Now, in general, the only modules that you do not do as part of your curriculum, your compulsory curriculum, that are at level 300 are the FET content modules. So the example I've listed here is Information Systems 310 and Information Systems 320. Those are examples of level 300 modules. Obviously, Travel and Tourism 310 and 320, or Sports Science 310 and 320, Physical Sciences 310, 320, any of the FET modules, content modules have a 310 and 320. So you have to have at least 2 of your elective modules at level 300. Generally, what this means is that you will probably have done the 210 and the 220 modules in that same subject. So possibly you will have done, for example, Information Systems 210, 220, 310, and 320. Okay, by doing those 4, you will have managed to do your 2 level 300 modules. There are very few FET subjects that would allow you to do the 310 and 320 without having done the 210 and 220 first. So in general, you will probably have at least 4 content modules in one single FET subject, and that would include the 310 and the 320. Now, the other elective modules can technically be anything, with one proviso, and that is that if you do not have a matric pass at 40% or higher in either core mathematics or mathematical literacy, then one of your elective modules would have to be basic mathematics. Okay, so in other words, if you did core maths or maths literacy and got a mark under 40%, now we are aware, of course, that a mark in the 30s does count as a pass at matric level, but because of the fact that you have to do primary mathematics as an foundation and intermediate phase specialization, it is recommended by the math department that if your mark is under 40%, that you do the basic mathematics module. So hopefully you should have picked this up and passed this in your first year. But if not, and your mark is below 40%, but particularly if it is below 30, then you need to pick up this module this year. Now, the Mathematics for Life and Teaching module is an equivalent module that we offer to students in the senior FET or FET phases. So it is possible that if you started in one of those phases in first year and then switched to this phase in second year, that you possibly might have done Maths for Life and Teaching instead of basic mathematics. If you have done that, then that is acceptable, because the key thing here is that you have to have passed a module in in mathematics if you do not have your matric pass in maths. And please, if you've got below 30%, then you really have to have done basic maths or maths in life and teaching. If you haven't, then you will not graduate. Okay. If your mark was in the 30s, then we might negotiate with the math department whether they will accept that. But in general, if your mark was below 40% in grade 12, then you must have completed either basic math or possibly Math for Life and Teaching somewhere within your qualification in order to graduate. So please, if this applies to you, make sure that you do this, because we check this very carefully at the end of your 4th year during ERS checking, when we are checking to see if you are degree complete. And we are very, very careful about this. And we have picked up a few cases of students who tried to get through without meeting this requirement, and they did not complete and graduate in their 4th year. They had to come back and complete the math requirement. So please, if this applies to you, make sure that you register for either basic mathematics or Mathematics for Life and Teaching this year. And if you cannot find that on the online registration system, then please liaise with the academic leader for mathematics or the deputy academic leader for mathematics. So that's either Professor Bansalal or Professor Vermolen Mudley, if you need to pick those one of those modules up. Okay, your other electives, as I said, could be anything, because all we check for is the math requirement, and we look for the 2 level 300. The other 3 electives, or the other electives, we do not mind what they are, because there is no rule specifying what the others can be. So the others could be your FET content. You could choose to do all 6 electives in the FET subject of your choice. You could do modules in a learning area like technology or life orientation. You could go and pick up extra language modules, maybe do both ELC and English Com. There are other options. You could do another foundation module. Okay, but what we check for are the 2 level 300s, and we check the math requirement, and then of course we're checking to see that you have met the credits. If you've got the credits, we know you've done the electives. So please just check that you have got your 2 level 300 elective modules and that you meet the math requirement. Other than that, we don't mind what your other electives are, but these we check thoroughly. So ladies and gentlemen, good luck. Check what you have done against these requirements, identify any gaps, and see if you can pick up the outstanding modules this year so that you complete your degree and graduate at the end of 2021. Good luck.